right, so we've been doing this series called Not a Fan. But I think before we even jump into that, what I want to know from you, or at least to get you to think about, to ponder a little bit, is who first told you about Jesus? Like for you, maybe it was a parent, or maybe it was a grandparent. Maybe you happened to go to one of these things called a vacation Bible school, or maybe you attended a Sunday school and somebody was talking to you about Jesus, and you probably remember the first time that kind of set in. And you began to kind of wonder, what if? And who is this guy? Well, if you didn't grow up in a Christian home, then you can kind of relate with my story a little bit. I didn't grow up in a church-going family. We had a church that sometimes, well, occasionally we would make it to, and that was our church. But I couldn't even tell you when we went or much of the details about it. But I do remember that in about junior high school, I felt like God was drawing me to go to church. Now, at that time, I couldn't have told you it was God drawing me. It was just like there was some sense of curiosity. I wanted to know more about this situation. Like who is this Jesus? What is this supposed to be about? And so I started attending on occasion, or at least more occasionally, a church. And I kicked over into Sunday school class and hung out with some of the people that were my age. And eventually that kicked up, and I started going more often, and I started going to a youth ministry, and even into high school, though. It was my senior year of high school when I was out partying on a Friday night, had an event that Saturday morning. I got caught. And I hit a crossroads in my life where I had to decide, do I want to keep pretending? Do I want to deny Christ, or do I just want to go all in? Because I'm playing two sides of the fence here, and I really can't ride both sides. Now, some of you are here today, and you're kind of going through some of those feelings. Some of you are coming in because this is your occasion. Welcome, we're glad to have you. And we know that this is a journey, and you'll grow through that process if you'll open up and allow God to speak to you through that. Some of you are coming in because you're starting to hit a crossroads. You feel like, you know what, hey, I've been professing that I believe in this Jesus. I believe in God and the Bible, but when I leave here, I kind of check out and I do my own thing and I go on with life as normal. And God has a way of just humbling us and bringing us to a point where we have to make a decision. And it's kind of like, are you in or are you out? And it's crazy like that. Are you in or are you out? And some of us, we just want to be a fan of Jesus. We want to be an enthusiastic admirer. We want to sit on the sideline and we want to cheer Him on, and we just don't want it to cost us too much. We don't want to give up our comfort. We don't want to have to change. And so even we would say, you know what, I'll follow Jesus as long as it doesn't cost too much. As long as it's not too much of my time or too much of my money, or I don't have to serve too many people or those kind of people. And so we put our faith in Jesus in a box, and we tell God where He can come into our life at. We say, I want you, I want to follow you, I want to do what you want to do, as long as you play by my rules. Now, I'm not going to ask for a show of hands because, quite frankly, that's probably most of us, at least from time to time, where we feel like, I want a little bit of Jesus, not enough to change me, not enough to control me, just enough to save me. Because after all, I don't want to go to hell. I've heard heaven is a lot better place. So give me just a little bit of Jesus. Well, what I need to tell you is that we're going to sell you the whole gospel this morning, and we're going to share with you that it's not always going to be that easy. Okay, it's not going to be, I'll just show up on Sunday morning and I'll go through the motions. It's not that maybe I'll teach a class here or there or do these kind of things and I'll kind of come on my time. It's a question of, are you going to be just an enthusiastic admirer, a fan of Jesus, or are you going to be a follower? Are you going to go all in? And we're in Luke chapter 9. So if you want to follow along in one of the Bibles we provided, page 563, Luke chapter 9. And this is the passage of Scripture that we're leaning from throughout this series. Luke chapter 9, verse 23. And he said to all, this being Jesus, he's talking to the entire crowd, if anyone, that means it's an open invitation, if anyone would come after me, let him deny himself. Okay, deny it's kind of a foreign word, at least it is in America, because we replace deny with an indulge. We want to indulge ourselves into more food and more money and more entertainment. And Jesus is saying, if you want to follow me, listen up, you're going to have to deny yourself and take up your cross daily. Now, when we say cross, we're not talking about a polished piece of jewelry. We're not talking about a little bit of ink on your body. We're talking about a big piece of wood that was used for public humiliation, and it was an instrument of death. And so when Jesus was talking to the crowds, he's like, guys, I want you to hear me. This is going to cost you daily. You're going to have to die to yourself, to your own wants, to your own desires, because you're going to have to deny yourself daily to follow me. Now here's a little context in this situation, this story. So we're in Luke chapter 9, and we can see that just a few verses before this, that there is this feeding of the 5,000. Here's kind of the quick synopsis of it. So Jesus is going around with his disciples, his group of students, and they're going from community to community, and they're healing people. They're making blind people see, and deaf people hear, and lame people walk. And people are starting to hear about this, and so he's developing a crowd, and to the point where he's getting kind of overwhelmed and he needs to go take a break. Have you ever been there? He gets so overwhelmed and he needs to take a break, so he grabs his disciples and they head off so that they can spend some time in prayer and isolation. And the crowd follows them. Scripture in Luke tells us that it was over 5,000 people. Now we know that in that time they counted the men. So sorry ladies, children, you weren't counted at that time. But we can assume that then there was probably over 15,000 people gathered together there to listen to Jesus and what he had to say. I mean, this is an amazing event. And then it comes about mealtime. One of the disciples is like, hey, Jesus, what are we going to feed these people? And they didn't have any fast food. They couldn't just run to the restaurant, open up a tab. He's even telling Jesus, you know what, we don't have enough money here even to pass out little bits, little crumbs to these people. How are we going to take care of them? And Jesus uses this as an opportunity to stretch his disciples and to help them grow in their faith, but also an opportunity to teach the people who are gathered around. So if you know the story, you know that there was a little boy that they found. He had 5 loaves and 2 fish. Barely enough to feed your family, I know. Wouldn't feed mine. Well, the loaves maybe. 5 loaves, 2 fish, and they bless it, they pray for it, they break it, and they put it in these baskets and pass it around to all the people. And they pick up basketfuls of leftovers. This is crazy. This is crazy. Now, maybe you're like me. I get a little snack, and it makes me hungrier than I was before. It's like, maybe you're familiar with Snickers. I mean, Snickers has this advertisement claim. It's a lie. Don't buy into it. Snickers, it really satisfies. Okay? Because I don't know how many times my tummy's been rumbling and I'm thinking, oh, what could I have? A Snickers, it really satisfies. And then I get to the end and I'm like, I'm kind of hungry. Like, it didn't really fit. So what do I do next? I'm thinking, I just ate a lot of empty calories, and I'm still hungry. So these guys, over 5,000 people gathered together, they pick up the leftovers because these people were satisfied. They ate and they had their full. And so the disciples, they went on across the lake in the boat. They left Jesus there without a boat. He went up on the hill to pray. The people kind of crashed for the night. They wake up in the morning, go to find Jesus. He's not there. Well, we're not going to really spend a lot of time on this story, but Jesus walks across the water to catch up with his disciples. It's a pretty cool story, but that's not where we're going. What we need to know is that they wake up and they're like, where's he at? Where'd he go? We want more. We want more. We don't know what He did, what's so amazing about this food He provided, but we need some more. And so they chase down Jesus and the disciples and they find Him. And so Jesus has got a great opportunity. He's got a huge stage to present the gospel message to them, to tell them about what's going to take place in His life for them. And this is what He tells them. Huge crowd. If you want to come after me, you must deny yourself. Take up your cross daily and follow me. Okay, Jesus, I just want some food, man. Like, can you hook us up again? Like, Jesus, I just want to see the lame people walk and the deaf people, I want them to hear, and the blind people, I want them to see, and whatever I'm dealing with, can't you just take care of that? Sometimes we have kind of a selfish, self-feeding perspective of our relationship with Jesus. And we say, I want just enough Jesus to fix me. I want just enough Jesus to get me to heaven, but not enough to change me. Not enough that it's going to make me uncomfortable. Not enough that I'm going to have to deny myself. You see, we can gather together on Easter and we can go, hey, there's this guy named Jesus and He stepped down out of heaven and he died for you so that you wouldn't have to face death, and His blood covers over your sins and you have new hope and new life and new opportunities, and that's a great message, but you need to know that's not all of it. You see, Jesus didn't die so that we can continue to live the way that we want to live. He didn't say, hey, I just want to give this to you, free ticket to heaven, boom, there you go. You're good to go. Live however you want. It's kind of like if you want to follow, like if you're done just being a fan, like saying, I believe in Jesus, this is going to cost you. You're going to have to deny yourself. Maybe your comfort, maybe your security. You're going to have to follow Him. So we read a little bit later the story of these three guys that Jesus comes into a relationship with. It says, in chapter 9, verse 57, as they were going along the road, someone said to him being Jesus, I will follow you wherever you go. We like to think that that's how we would respond. I mean, because we can go back to Matthew in chapter 4 and we see these guys that were fishermen. That means they kind of flunked out of the rabbinical school training. They were not the elite. These guys went back home and they did the family business and they were fishing. And Jesus said, come, follow me, and I'll make you fishers of men. So immediately they left their nets, they left their boats, they left their families, and they began to follow. And we're thinking, yeah, if Jesus came walking through Columbus and He said, hey, follow me, sign me up. I don't like my job anyway. All I got at home is bills. Jesus, I'm all in. And so this guy is like, yeah, I'll follow you. I will follow you wherever. But then Jesus throws it down. He ups the ante, just like He did before to the entire crowd. He upped the ante. He said, foxes have holes, and the birds of the air have nests. They have homes. They have dwellings. But the Son of Man, that being Jesus, has nowhere to lay His head. So what about wherever, when wherever means that you don't have a roof over your head? To keep the sun off during the day. To keep the rain off. Or hey, we live in Nebraska, how about the wind? What about when you don't have walls surrounding you to keep you safe and comfortable? What about when you have to step out of the climate-controlled houses that we live in? Are you willing to follow then? Are you willing to follow there? You see, Jesus moves from general to specific. And it kind of attacks our fears because we like to be secure. We like to be comfortable. And we like to put God in a box and say, you know what, I'll follow you as long as you stay here. Because that's where it's safe. But Jesus doesn't call us to be safe. He calls us to stretch and to act in faith. I can remember when I was doing student ministry in Council Bluffs, and my wife and I both felt like God was calling us to Minnesota. We were just looking for another house, not a move. And I remember having this discussion like, God, why Minnesota? Like, I know nothing in Minnesota. I don't have family there. That's farther away from family. Why would we do that? I had to be honest, it's just all because of the call of God. God said, will you go there? And I said, yes. Now, I will tell you that there was another organization that asked me if I would consider moving to Wyoming to start a new church. And I said, God's going to have to speak really loud and really clear if I'm going to move to Wyoming. But what if God was telling you that? What if God was stretching you beyond where you're at? What if God was saying, hey, how about in your homes? Will you follow me there? Now, homes seem easy because that's a place of comfort, but you know what? In my home, that's where the guard comes down. That's where the real guy steps out. And sometimes that guy isn't as patient as he ought to be. And sometimes that guy deals with anger more than he ought to. And sometimes that guy is a little bit selfish. If God is calling you to follow Him, will you do it at your home? Can you be the man or the woman of the house that you need to be? Can you be the parent or the child that you need to be right where God has placed you? What about at your workplace? You say, I'll follow Jesus, but what about at work? What about a place when they tell you that you can't talk about Jesus? What about a place that you have friends there and you have a reputation there? Are you willing to lay it on the line because you're willing to say, I follow Jesus? What about there? What about when you're with your buddies? Guys or girls, you're out on a Saturday night. Are you willing to follow Jesus there? It's about to get a little uncomfortable, isn't it? Because if we're honest, many of us, we come from that type of lifestyle where we always wanted to live that way and we always wanted to behave a certain way. And we get with those friends and we began doing some, not so wise things. And then Sunday comes and then we go, I should probably go to church, but I feel a little guilty right now. Or I should probably go to church, but maybe next time. What about when you're with your friends? What about when you're just hanging in the neighborhood? Involved in community service? Are you willing to follow Jesus there? See, sometimes we want to say, just like our kids do, and I like to play this card with my kids, hey, why don't you come with me? Get your shoes, get your coat, let's go. Inevitably, they will ask, where are we going? Right? You would do the same thing. If I said, hey, grab your stuff, let's go. You'd be like, okay, where are we going? It's kind of like the guy that says, hey, what are you doing tomorrow at 2? And you're like, oh, I'm free. Oh, stink. He's probably going to ask me to do something. And so I take them, and sometimes I take them someplace fun, and sometimes I take them to work, and they get it mixed up a little bit. Don't know which one they're going to get. But if Jesus says, hey, will you follow me? And then we're kind of like, sure, where are you going? Oh, you're going there? You're going to work? I have something else to do. But you see, a real disciple of Jesus, a real follower of Jesus said, yeah, I'll follow you. Now, where are we going? You see these disciples, these fishers of men in Matthew chapter 4, they can go, oh, hey, Jesus, where are we going? No, they left their nets, and they left their boats, and they left their families. They said, let's go.